so far from that. That is the light, and that's the truth. We need to get back to that. That's the only way people's hearts and minds are going to change. It's not going to be this rhetoric spewed on both sides, fighting and even tweeting it out amongst each other. It's deeper than that. It's bigger than that.
I think that's really true, the depth. Lisa, what's your take?
Well, I think the best thing to do is for people to stop trying to score political points when something terrible happens. There really does need to be universal condemnation when we see violence, particularly in the name of politics, as we saw after the mail bomber. Everyone universally condemned him. We should have seen that as well when we saw Republicans on the receiving end of death threats throughout the Kavanaugh hearings. There just needs to be universal condemnation when people are doing things bad and trafficking in violence or, trying to hurt people. We should all just say that is wrong. But your comment about Hillary Clinton and her sort of disdain for Trump supporters, I found that interesting because her basket of deplorable comments sort of crystallized why voters in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania that hadn't gone Republican since Reagan went for him. You saw how she felt about tens of millions of people in this country. And so that's why President Trump resonated with those people, particularly when he had talked about the forgotten men and women. And these are people that were also forgotten under the Obama administration as well. And so you can clearly kind of see why people in those states went for President Trump.
Yeah, I mean, just a very quick last. We'll talk about the book in a second, but we really will. Don't worry. But I just wanted to, this contempt for fellow Americans. You don't see that in the other direction. It seems to me. It feels like the top sneering at the working people, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that has a lot. Go back to our roots too. Our parents would have never put up with us being stinkers to our neighbors or to our classmates by bullying them and being intolerant. Anthony, we were just talking about, hey, do you have a problem when somebody has a differing opinion? Do you want to go beat the crap out of them and duke it out? No.
Good conservatives respect other people.
I know. That's exactly right.
The governor and I would like to take the battle into the intellectual marketplace of ideas and see if our ideas can win versus their ideas. They want to silence us because they know that we may be able to convince people that what we're saying is true. Individual liberty, respect, self-determination, market forces, incentive-based market forces driving your success.
Well, in the nicest possible way, I want to silence you right now because we have to go. Okay. But we'll be back in a second. And again, I just want to leave this discussion with... Tom Hanks is absolutely right about that tweet. Love thy neighbor, no exceptions. But everyone needs to take that on board. Okay, coming up, the populist revolution is above all a blue-collar revolution, as we've been discussing. It is a giant change in American politics, and we'll debate it next. Everyone, Anthony Scaramucci here has a new book out called Trump, the Blue-Collar President. Now, I've actually read most of this book. I haven't got to the end. I really have read it, and I absolutely love it. I really want to recommend it to everyone. You've got to get this book. It's incredibly well written. It's clearly written by him, not by some anonymous, whoever it may be. It's very personal, and it's really, really interesting. One of the things that I found really fascinating was this kind of surprising connection between you and the president in construction, the construction business, an absolutely classic blue-collar business. And that's the world I grew up in too. My stepfather was a construction worker. I'd go on construction sites. My first job was a project manager on a construction site. There's something about that, isn't there, that just teaches you the basics.
Yeah, and you got to get up early, you got to get on time, you have to pull together in a team. And Fred Trump, I did a lot of research on the Trump family, and Fred Trump pushed Donald J. Trump to do those sorts of things. And I was talking to the president today about how they used to knock on doors to collect rent, and if there was a blue-collar worker in one of their apartment complexes that couldn't pay the rent that month, let's say they were laid off or something like that, the president and his dad were always cool about it. Like, okay, no problem, you're an honorable person, let's see if you can make the rent next month, and we'll wait. You don't hear those stories about the family. And the president, he's driving around in his big Cadillac at age 25, and he's taking coins out of laundry facilities and vending machines at his dad's place. And so it just brought him in touch with that common experience. And if you were on the campaign trail with the president, I did 26 campaign stops with him. He did about 170. You can say he genuinely loved these people, and they loved him back. And so, my Democratic friends are upset about all this stuff. A lot of that anger and that nastiness is coming from that. He stole their traditional base. They didn't even go to Wisconsin. You just have to think about the alacrity of that. You've got the Speaker of the House is from Wisconsin. There's a red guy by the name of Scott Walker in Wisconsin. But the consultancy said, no, you guys own that state. They're all blue-collar people. Don't have to go there. And so my book is about how he saw that when there were 17 or 18 different elites that frankly didn't.
Yes.
But I do also point out that Bernie Sanders saw it.
That's exactly right. And I make
so
this
there were
point
two
often on this
candidates
show.
that actually saw it. But the president won out because America is a center-right country as it relates to business and it relates to generating your own open economic incentives.
But the populist left, have a very similar analysis, which I agree with about what's gone wrong. It's just that the solutions, I think, are wrong and end up being counterproductive. Now, Sarah, the thing, I don't want to embarrass you, but I think you were the real pioneer of this modern populism. And I just want to remind everyone, if you don't mind, of what there's done. Before we play this, just hang on a second. You may not know, I was literally there on the floor of the convention center in 2008. And that's the moment I thought, wow, this is really something. This is interesting and different. And it was the beginning, I think, of this populist moment. Let's have a look.
I've learned quickly these last few days that if you're not a member in good standing of the Washington elite, then some in the media consider a candidate unqualified for that reason alone. Here's a little news flash for those reporters and commentators. I'm not going to Washington to seek their good opinion. I guess a small town mayor is sort of like a community organizer, except that you have actual responsibilities. I might add that in small towns, we don't quite know what to make of a candidate who lavishes praise on working people when they're listening, and then talks about how bitterly they cling to their religion and guns when those people aren't listening.
Incredibly powerful. The populist revolution, how do you think it's going?
Thankfully, it's caught steam. It barreled across the country in 2016, and it's so wonderful to have nothing to lose but to get out there and speak truth and speak candidly, and that's what I believe that our president is in that same boat. I'm convinced that it's men and women in Carhartts and steel-toed boots who built and are building this country, and unfortunately, it's men and women in the suits and ties that are tearing it down too often. So those people, the grassroots of this country, they have more common sense in their little finger than most of those politicians up on the Hill do. And we need to listen to them. But Anthony, maybe you can educate me on this. I have always believed that there is some kind of inherent disconnect, though, in the wealthy, in how they perceive things and how they're connected to practical things in our daily lives, compared to Joe Blow six-pack. Like, take the wealthy like Nancy Pelosi. Please, take Nancy. Nancy Pelosi. She's making decisions on our oil development opportunities in the country, right? And yet, does she understand the effects of her decisions on how it affects our pocketbooks? Because when was the last time she ever went and, realized the price of gas, fueled up her own tank, Probably. When was the last time she's gone into a grocery store and then made her family a meal that maybe she had to shoot first? When was the last time she has really understood what it is that they in the bubble are doing that affect our daily lives? And they're blessed with wealth, so they don't have to deal with a lot of the stuff. Struggle.
You're going to have to, I think the answer to that question is going to have to be buy Anthony's book, because it's all in there, how the president who's very wealthy can understand that.
But I do admit that on my path, my own financial independence, I started losing my ear. And it was the Trump
that's why the book is so great, because
you campaign that brought me back down to earth.
He reflects on that. It's really great. By the way, shooting your own meal, that reminds me of my great friend Joe Rogan, who's a big advocate of that. Never done it myself. Coming up, the real reason why the economy is booming under President Trump and why even the threat of a Democratic win in the midterms could spell disaster. Don't go away. Got the midterms coming up. There's a real threat to this incredible economy we're seeing. The unemployment, the growth, the rise in incomes. That's because the reason we've had this amazing Trump economy is a surge in business confidence. It's not just the tax cuts or the regulation or anything like that. It's the fact that business knows you've got a pro-enterprise administration. And even the threat of the Democrats getting back in, even if they get the House but they can't do anything because they haven't got the Senate, even that would be a plunge in business confidence, and that would start to hurt the economy. And that's really important to understand. Right, Lisa, I think, is back with us. The Trump economy, what's your take on the threat that lies ahead if the midterms don't go the right way?
Well, I 100% agree with your points, but also think about it like this, too. Nothing is going to get done in Congress if Democrats take control of the House. There will be no policy passed. All we will see is investigation. So that's not good for the economy at all, to have the government literally at a standstill as a result of Dems taking back the House. Unfortunately, though, I don't think the economy plays as big of a role in the midterm elections in terms of driving voters out to the polls as it does during a presidential election. I think the economy will be the reason why President Trump is reelected in 2024 if the economy is still, or 2020, sorry, if the economy is still doing well.
Yeah.
2020, I clarify that. 2020, if the economy is still going strong. No, if the economy, I'm tired. I'm sorry. If the economy is still going strong in 2020. So I don't think it plays as big of a role. It's actually more of these issues that kind of drive passion. You look at the left, the number one issue for them is healthcare.
Yeah.
You look at the right, the number one issue is immigration. But, you know, the economy is going strong, and that would change if Republicans lose power.
Yes. Sarah, I think this confidence point, I mean, look, they can do a lot of damage without actually doing anything, just by being there.
Right, right. And wasn't that refreshing, though, to see that the psyche of the country became much more optimistic?
Yes,
I mean, happy warriors were able to get out there and get their message out there with this change that we saw in 2016, and consumer confidence, which so much is based upon the trajectory, started going up. And that will continue, as she's pointing out, too, though. If the GOP stays in control, just because of the time-tested truths that we believe in, the planks in our platform with free enterprise, with capitalism, and all those things that have proven to work versus the socialism that the left wants to usher in.
And so I mean, this point about confidence is crucial, isn't it? It's this fear that this pro-business climate just goes away.
Yeah, and he did two masterful things, the tax reform, and he de-layered the regulation around Dodd-Frank. And so what that's done, Stephen, it's opened up the community banks to more lending in these small rural areas. And so the combination of those two things are really starting to kick in now. If you look at what economists look at, the tax cut usually takes about 12 to 18 months to really see its robust effect on an economy. And so you've got all that going on, plus the capital repatriation from overseas.
Because that's right, you've had an investment boom. That's the big thing that's happened. You've had a capital investment boom,
which should lead to a long-term positive growth trend. The magic wand that President Obama said, does President Trump have it? The magic wand is optimism, delayering of the regulation, and incentivizing businesses large and small to invest back in America.
And you incentivize them by getting government out of the private sector.
Exactly.
They know that about him, and that's why they're so gung-ho.
So sorry. Coming up, the mooch, he's right here. He's going to share some inside info on what's really going on in the Trump White House. Stay with us. Anthony Scaramucci was President Trump's communications director for only 11 days. 11 days. Let's just be proud of it.
But 954,000 seconds. I mean, you know, he can shape it that way too.
So you know what's going on. And you've got a particular, I've noticed as you've been talking about this book, you've got a particular focus of your remarks on what's going on inside the White House, and that's Chief of Staff John Kelly.
Well, so the problem is, you know, it comes up obviously because I made some remarks about him, you know, because I'm obviously run reasonably successful businesses and know how to evaluate talent and put a team together. So people think my remarks about him are personal because he fired me, but if you read my book, you'll find out that that wasn't the first time I've been fired, and it probably won't be the last time that I'm going to be fired. So I'm a little bit of a renegade, but as it relates to him, you know, he's just, unfortunately, he's not suited to be the president's chief of staff. This president, that's just my opinion. Now, I applaud his service to the country, 40 years as a Marine. He's a 4-star general, and he's got an interesting skill set maybe for the Marine Corps, but he hasn't been able to recruit anybody inside the White House. And so that tells you something about his management style and his leadership style. You know, you got to be able to recruit people. You know, I put a team together from 0 to 65. The governor has been to our conferences. She sees how we run these things. It's collaboration, it's delegation, it's really not about me, and there's no need to create that level of insecurity and intimidation. So
I think the president,
that's me. I'm sure the president's mad at me for saying that because, like, you know, he doesn't like that being exposed, but it's also healthy. I think the word sycophancy is much closer to selfishness and closer to self-preservation. The word honesty is way closer to loyalty, Stephen.
I agree with that.
I'd rather be honest about the situation And by the way, I'm willing to debate anybody. I'm even willing to do mud wrestling, whatever it takes.
John Kelly? I don't want to see that. I don't think anyone
I
wants
think
to
he
see
could
that.
take me in a mud wrestle. I probably wouldn't want to mud wrestle him, but I'm saying...
Hang on, we're supposed to be against the culture of violence and all the rest of it. Okay,
I just want
to say, I agree about John Kelly. I think he's said some things that are really disloyal about the president, how he's kind of manipulating him on immigration and so on. I think he was totally incompetent over the border separations. I think that you can lay his... Anyway, look, let's go on about it. I think that one of the things that's really interesting is it seems to me the administration is doing better as the president has got more people around him who are like-minded and can sort of get where he's coming from on this populist agenda.
You know, loyalty, I think, is the greatest virtue. And you can't run a tight ship. You can't be successful and efficient and effective with disloyal people around you. Unfortunately, at that level of government, though, a lot of times people look at loyalty as a one-way street.
Yeah.
You know, so those who work really hard to help propel somebody into a position and then they're forgotten about or, you know, they're strewn aside, that they become disheartened. So, building that team, though, as everybody knows, in the private sector and in public service, too, and you can't succeed with...
I agree. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to quickly get Lisa in. Barely any time, but I think, Lisa, it applies to Congress, too. The president needs more people who share his populist agenda in Congress.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I think President Trump, he's the guy in the White House, so it's his policies that are supposed to be driving what the White House is doing every single day. But look, part of the reason why Washington, D.C. hates the president so much is he didn't kiss the ring. He's an outsider. He didn't bow down to the establishment. He didn't want their approval. The reason the media hates President Trump is he doesn't kowtow to them. He doesn't pander to them.
Yeah.
They're so used to Republicans just taking the base of their question and answering it. President Trump challenges them, and they hate that. He can go on Twitter and get his message out. He doesn't need them, and he doesn't need the establishment, and that is why they hate him so much.
Good summary. Thank you so much, Lisa. All right, we're going to try and end the show on a positive note after a tough week. My message to both Democrats and Republicans, that's next. Don't go away.
Today, 97% of employers agree that skills like teamwork, attention to detail, and customer service are critical to business success, like the ones we teach here every day.
When did it become okay for men to be lazier, softer, weaker? Get ageless male with ingredients that